Alright, so we all know that by the end of Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom, things were pretty bad for the dinosaurs. The surviving ones were on Isla Nublar, but then Mount Sibo erupted, basically wiping out everything there. The ones that had been captured were brought to Lockwood Manor, where they were supposed to be shipped to a sanctuary, but they were secretly being auctioned off instead to rich people from everywhere. That all fell apart when they were released into the wild, setting up the Jurassic World Dominion's whole premise of dinosaurs living amongst humans. So fast forward 4 years and the dinosaurs are basically everywhere. Some are being sold on the black market, others are being used for underground fighting rings, and some are just roaming around cities and the countryside. The company called Biosyn had been scooping up as many as they could and keeping them in a massive sanctuary in the Italian Dolomites, and this is called the Biosyn Valley. And by the end of Dominion, the UN, the United Nations, officially turned Biosyn's valley into a proper sanctuary. But outside of that, dinosaurs were still all over the world. Some were adapting to new environments and humanity is basically still learning to coexist with them. So now, in a complete 180 degrees turn, the premise of Jurassic World Rebirth states that instead of them thriving in a new world, the dinosaurs were actually almost gone. And the reason behind it was still really not that clear. All that was revealed to us is that the events would take place 5 years after that of Dominion. And in that time frame, most of these dinosaurs have gone back to where they belong, to extinction. They say that most regions of the world have proven to be inhospitable to these prehistoric reptiles, and that the only place where the last remnants live is in a remote tropical region off of the coast of South America, near the islands of Barbados. But the fact that they just say that the dinosaurs died off due to the world being inhospitable is one of the most vague explanations ever. So here in this video we will give you 5 proper reasons as to why these dinosaurs would have died off by the time of Jurassic World Rebirth. These would be as scientific as possible, given that it's already a sci-fi universe. Okay, reason number 1. Viruses. This would fall in line with the world is inhospitable theme for the dinosaurs to exist. If Jurassic World Rebirth depicts a world where dinosaurs have largely died off again, then their survival after Dominion was always going to be a struggle. One of the most immediate and devastating threats would have been modern pathogens. The dinosaurs, having been isolated on Isla Nublar and Isla Sorna for decades, would have had no immunity to viruses and bacteria that exist today all over the world. So if you remember, the Lost World novel theorized that the DX virus was a disease that could have contributed to the original extinction, and maybe something similar could have emerged in Rebirth. Many viruses struggle to survive in tropical climates but thrive in temperate regions, exactly where the dinosaurs were introduced after their escape. Also, diseases like avian influenza and the rhinovirus, which affects birds and reptiles today, could have devastated populations with no natural evolved immunity or internal defenses. Plus, with the limited genetic diversity, entire species of dinos could be wiped out by just a single outbreak. Now, reason number 2, inbreeding. Beyond disease, the dinosaurs would have faced serious challenges in reproduction and of course inbreeding. Their populations started from an extremely small genetic pool, meaning harmful recessive traits and genes would quickly pass down to the successive generations. This is a very common problem in conservation biology, where species that go through a bottleneck phase, meaning a very low population number, such as cheetahs or others, suffer from weakened immune systems, and thereby reducing their fertility and raising their metabolic disorders. This issue would be magnified for dinosaurs, for especially these cloned dinosaurs, as they share a similar, if not almost the same, genetic material. Thus, this means that the effects of inbreeding would set in far more rapidly than in naturally occurring species. Without human intervention to maintain genetic diversity, many of these species would have become unviable just within a few generations. Inbreeding would lead to recessive genes taking over and greatly lowering their immune system and even metabolic processes. And given that they are all clones, that means the level of inbreeding would be a magnitude higher. So Rexy and the other T-Rexes in the Biosyn Valley would have faced this particular hardship. Plus, for Rexy, It might just have been age that would have killed her off, since she was already over 40 years old by the time of the Biosyn Valley being turned into a sanctuary, and then the T-Rexes were theorized to have only lived until around 30 years of age, thereby Rexy surpassing the natural lifespan by 10 years. Even with the new genetic insertions from modern animals, it would have been a stretch to expect her to keep on surviving. So, that's the fate of Rexy. Life finds a way? Not really, bub. Now we come to reason number 3, genetic degradation. Another major factor contributing to their decline would be genetic degradation. These dinosaurs were never really fully authentic to begin with. Their DNA had gaps that were filled with genetic material from modern-day species like frogs, birds, and reptiles. At first, this allowed them to function normally, but over time, minor mismatches in their genomes could have led to major issues. Errors in replication, mutations, and incompatibilities between their hybridized genetic material would have likely have compounded over generations. So without the oversight of geneticists like those at InGen or Biosyn, these creatures would have gradually deteriorated, leading to a slow and inevitable decline. So the mismatch might be tiny in the beginning and would result in mutations and even eventual extinction due to certain codons and tandems being off from the whole genome. Every successive generations of dinosaurs would suffer more from the degradation in the replication processes of the DNA, which would have led to inviable or stillbirth offsprings. Number 4. Environmental mismatch or inhospitability. This would have also played a significant role in their extinction, as was stated in the premise, although in a very vague manner, as if it was as simple as ABC. See, dinosaurs have evolved to exist in ecosystems that no longer exist in the world. Back then, their diets, predator-prey dynamics, and even atmospheric conditions were drastically different. The ability of an animal to exist and thrive in a new ecosystem is really a complex process. Some invasive species might find it easier due to the lack of defense mechanisms from the life forms that were already there, so they get an advantage. But most of the time, they don't match well with the biosphere, and these invasive species, the dinosaurs here, for instance, they would die off. Take this for example. Many species of plants that herbivorous dinosaurs relied on back then went extinct millions of years ago, and they don't exist in the modern world. And the flowering plants of today could have been toxic. So if you remember the Triceratops from the first Jurassic Park movie, it too was poisoned by a plant. So the same thing could happen to a lot of the herbivorous dinosaurs that escaped to the world. Now, to the carnivorous ones, they would have struggled with an imbalance in prey population, competing with modern predators that are better adapted for today's world. Now this here would be a death deal to the velociraptor. See, even if Blue the raptor was thriving in the start with hunting prey in the colder regions of North America, the fact that she is alone with her young one would mean that the chance of survival is pretty or really minimal in the wild, which is filled with packs of wolves or large bears who are in their own right powerful apex predators as well. That, coupled with a lack of prey, a cold climate, the chance of injury and infection, this all leads to a conclusion that one raptor cannot hold back the line against the force of extinction. Now we come to the final reason number 5, why the dinosaurs died out before Jurassic World Rebirth. This is human intervention, and this would have sealed their fate. So despite the United Nations turning Biosyn Valley into a sanctuary, most dinosaurs were still living in the wild, and they would be seen as dangerous invasive species. Conflicts with humans, especially farmers and ranchers, would have led to mass culling, hunting, and eradication efforts, even in the face of political pressure. Because for a farmer, nothing matters more than their crop and livestock. That has always been the way. Of course, if we take a look at modern-day endangered species, they are protected by law. But realistically speaking, many are still killed when they are seen near human habitation. That's the way the world works. There's also poaching for black market trade or spot hunting, which would have further reduced the dinosaur numbers, with some species likely being wiped out entirely by this specific human activity. Governments would have had little incentive to protect these creatures, especially after the chaos they caused in Dominion. With no legal protection and constant conflicts with humans, these dinosaurs would have been systematically eliminated to prevent further disruption to ecosystems and human settlements. Thus, by the time of Jurassic World Rebirth, the dinosaurs' resurgence was likely nothing more but a brief moment in history, the fight before the dying of the light. The combination of disease, inbreeding, genetic instability, environmental mismatch, and human intervention would have had their way and made their long-term survival impossible. What was once seen as the return of the prehistoric world ultimately became another chapter in extinction, and the reason why they are only now found in an isolated tropical island would make perfect sense. And so with that, we end this video on the reasons why the dinosaurs in Jurassic World all died out. Leave a like for support and also subscribe. Take care, fam.